Hello and welcome to the second of three presidential candidate town halls. For those of you just joining today, I'm Steve Waldron from EFL Associates, and I'll serve as the facilitator here today. Our town hall is designed to allow the Missouri Southern family, community, and stakeholders the opportunity to meet the candidates. They'll do so via our in-house audience. Thank you for coming today. Also by streaming and by broadcast. Today's format will include a brief presentation by the candidate, followed by, I think, a pretty robust period of Q&A. With respect to the questions and answers, several questions have already been submitted, and we will supplement those with questions not only from the audience here today, but also our streaming community. The candidates have not seen the questions ahead of time. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce our candidate today. He has an EDD from the University of Georgia, an MBA from Mercer University, and a bachelor's degree from North Georgia College. Over the course of the past 30-plus years, he's been at the University of North Georgia, from a director of procurement to the comptroller to the vice president of business and finance, and now the senior vice president. And in his spare time, he teaches. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Frank J. Mac McConnell.
Thanks. Thank you, Steve, for that introduction. And I'm very happy to be with you today and very honored to be selected as a finalist for the presidency of Missouri Southern. I'd like to begin by introducing my family who've traveled with me from Dahlonega, Georgia, out this way. So my wife, soon to be in June of 42 years, Tona, is here. And my son, Zeb, 26 years old and an avid outdoorsman. And I can tell you, Zeb is quite impressed with the game and the hunting opportunities out in this neck of the woods, as we are too. So one immediate difference that you'll notice about me compared to Dr. Marble, he's got great hair. So let's just get that out of the way. Okay, so during this brief part of the presentation, I want to, during my presentation, I want to tell you a little bit about me and then tell you a bit about how I would approach the presidency here. So Steve mentioned part of my work background. I've been a EMT. I was during my undergraduate work at North Georgia. I was emergency medical technician. I did that in the summer before my first year of college. I've worked in the marble industry as a plant accountant, worked in the newspaper industry as an accountant as part of Gannett Corporation about the time they launched the USA Today newspaper. And as was mentioned in my higher ed career, I've been director of purchasing, the controller, VP, and senior vice president for business finance. So I've been a youth coach. I have taught 7th and 8th graders at a youth program at our church for over 20 years. And that's been an incredibly meaningful thing for me. And that many of the kids that come, we go out in buses and pick them up, et cetera. They're in many ways at risk. And so it's been, I hope I've helped them some small amount, because I know they certainly have helped me. And that's certainly impacted my interest in Missouri Southern, the fact that you have such a large first generation population in your enrollment class, over 62%, and relatively large minority population and international population, all makes a really unique and intriguing mix for the university. So during my 20 years as a senior level administrator in higher ed, I've worked for 4 presidents. I've worked with 6 provosts, worked with 4 vice presidents for institutional advancement, 7 vice presidents for student affairs and 4 interims, and 1 chief of staff and a vice president for leadership and global engagement. So I just shared that with you to talk about, as as it relates to me, I think my level of adaptability uh, and work with a wide range of people um, has been very helpful. Looking at that gentleman's outfit, that was how you doing? So I've put together 4 fundamental principles that guide how I approach my work and how I would approach this presidency that I'd like to share with you. First and foremost is the focus on academic quality and students. And so I say that in one sentence. They're equally important. They're mission critical to the university to have the level of academic quality and focus on our students, and student success is critical. In terms of my leadership style, I lead by serving others, by building consensus, by creating teams to achieve common goals that we can create together. And fundamental in my belief system is the notion of shared governance, open exchange of information, and transparency. And I am a tireless advocate for the students and faculty and staff of those that I serve. That advocacy extends to our governing board, to the state, and to the nation. That has been a hallmark of my career at the University of North Georgia and would be here at Missouri Southern. A couple of examples I would give you related to that is in 2015, I received the Judy Wilder Lifetime Achievement Award, and that is an award by the governing board in the state of Georgia for all of the facilities for the 26 public colleges and universities. And that recognizes a career of dedicated service and loyalty to the institution. And I was deeply honored to receive that award. Additionally, I received in 2015 the Golden Pick Award, which was a similar award for the Chamber of Commerce in Lumpkin County, which is the community in which I live. So associated with that, and as an example of my dedication and service to others, I'd like to tell you briefly about a custodian that I worked with for over 20 years. His name is Arnold. And so 5, 6 years ago, Arnold came up, and I'd not seen him in a while. He had disability. He had problems with liver and different things. And he came up to me, saw him in the elevator one day, and he said, "Mac, would you take care of my final expenses and handle my estate when I pass on?" I said, "Well, Arnold, what about your family?" I said, I'll do anything I can to help you." But he said, "Well, I don't trust my family. I don't have anybody around the area. And you're the only person at the university that treated me as a human being. You spoke to me every time you saw me. You didn't look down on me because I was a custodian, etc." And so that I was really touched by that. And I said, "Arnold, I'll do anything I can to help you." Didn't hear a word from for about 5 years. And then our HR department called me and said, "Well, Arnold had passed away and he named you as the beneficiary of his life insurance policy." It was a small policy amount, but so I went through with the probate court, and so he died without a will, although he named me the beneficiary. So by law in Georgia anyway, the next of kin, which was a nephew in Florida, was the executor of the state. But anyway, I was able to, and so that was they wanted the life insurance. So that's, "Oh, we want that." And they had no intention to pay his bills or any of that. So I was really honored in that I was able to take care of all his final expenses. And I've just ordered a veteran's headstone for his gravesite. I applied to the Veterans Affairs to get the headstone, and they would not provide it because I wasn't the executor of the state or next of kin. But anyway, I was able to handle that. So I wanted to share that with you. So if I could, I'd transition now into how I might approach the presidency of Missouri Southern and what the first 3 to 5 years might look like. So when you ask the question, what's next? I think the first obvious answer is change. Um, Change has always been a bit of a variable or a constant variable in higher education. And as you know, the academy moves somewhat slowly. If you, you might be aware, we have committees, and we have committees on committees, and we have committees that study committees. But um, in the end, we're out for the greater good of our students. But the pace of change will accelerate now in the world that we're in today as never before. And most leaders acknowledge that to remain relevant, you got to change. And I've been very impressed in studying Missouri Southern that you've embraced change. You've embraced it in your pedagogy. And so we're no longer just a in-person instructional design. You've added blended classes. And in 1 week, you took the entire university into online, which was quite remarkable as part of the coronavirus pandemic. So you have embraced change and identifying quality programs and unique things that give you distinctive competencies. Things like the transfer articulation agreement with the Kansas City Medical School, accelerated bachelor program, admission to both programs. That is very relevant. It's cool. It's unique. It is extremely good. Your partnership with the Missouri National Guard is very good. And your international mission is very attractive to me. And I think it's important that we're international partners. So as you think about your next president and when they move in here, kind of what we have to address. So I think when you come in, there will be certain urgent issues that many of these the administration today is already working on, but we'll have a series of questions. What does Missouri Southern look like in a post-coronavirus environment? What does fall semester look like? How do we maintain our academic quality with moving so rapidly to entirely online? What about our enrollment concerns? What about our residence halls? We're building right now a brand new residence hall to be open next fall. Are we going to be able to fill it? Is the requirement for bed space going to change based on the coronavirus? So those are immediate issues that the team and the board is already studying, but that will be things that will have to be addressed upon arrival of the new president. Additionally, there's a matter of the budget. And significant budget reductions have already been announced. Governor Parsons announced a couple of weeks ago an 8% holdback for the current fiscal year. And keep in mind, there's only a couple of months left in the current fiscal year, so that's extremely hard to deal with, probably over $2 million worth of reductions. And most assuredly more to come in FY21 as the state and the nation grapples with recovering from the pandemic and the economic collapse that really has happened. As an example, last Friday in Georgia, the governor there declared a 14% budget cut to all state agencies. And they said, well, that doesn't apply to FY20 that ends June 30th, but it's for the next fiscal year. And that's a $12 million budget cut for University of North Georgia, where I currently work. And then our instructions came out and said, well, you've got a week and a half to submit your plan. You must be strategic. You must be thoughtful, and you can't be across the board. Well, it's really hard to be strategic in a week and a half, but such is our world and that pace of change that we're having to deal with. So I would tell you now, with all this uncertainty, I've experienced it before. So in my career as a senior vice president in 22 years or so, we experienced in 2000, we experienced it in 2008, we're experiencing it now. You would note, I've noted that the percent funding that's provided by the state has been in a rapid free fall for 20 years, I guess. And where 22 years ago, the percent of state funding was 70, 75, 78%, and the balance being tuition. Now it's at where I work at University of North Georgia, it's in the low 40s percentile, and in Missouri Southern, it's in the low 30s. And so that's had a dramatic impact on how our universities operate, extreme pressure on tuition, on fundraising, on philanthropic support. A point of pride that I would make in all of that, when you look at the University of North Georgia, in spite of those reductions that we've experienced, our academic quality is in the top 5, 6, or 7 in any academic or student performance category that you want to look at. That's of the 21 public, call it 26 colleges and universities in Georgia, and 4 of them are Research One. That is a point of personal pride. I would tell you that I'm really not a self-promoter by nature. I want to give you a couple of examples of a series of emails that I got unsolicited last week. And this was before, in the first case, before they knew that budget cuts were coming. And in every case, it was before anybody knew that I was a finalist at Missouri Southern. Nobody knew that this was going on. At least these people didn't know. So I had a custodian that wrote me. In the quote, she said, "Thank you for always standing up for plant operations people." Also had an administrative assistant to the provost who wrote me and said, "We've been through budget cuts before, and the last time I was so thankful for the way the university handled it." Basically, when I say university, I mean you. I'm not as scared now as I was then. I sincerely believe that you honestly care about each employee's financial health. And one of my direct reports wrote me, and she said, "I'm already getting questions based on fear of people losing their jobs. My answer is that Mac will fight against layoffs like he did during the recession." And then I had a fellow vice president who has been at the university now for 2 years. He's a former president, has been in multiple student affairs positions, et cetera. He wrote me and he says, "I realize this is an unprecedented time in UNG's history. But as I have told many colleagues since I've been here, you're by far the best CFO I've worked with or supervised in my career. You've steered the UNG ship in a very positive financial manner, and we will survive this crisis." So I was really deeply touched to get those communications last week. So while we handle those, all of that is very urgent, and that will be on the plate of the new president when they come in to address. While we're addressing that, we must think strategically. And how I would go about that, first and foremost, I would listen. You don't walk in with all the answers, you walk in listening. And while I'm listening, I'll keep a keen eye on these following questions. These were outlined in the leadership statement. They've been expressed by the Board of Governors. The first question is, how does the vision of the university change? Does it need to change? Are the key priorities as an institution on track based on this ever-changing environment? Secondly, how are we promoting the MSSU brand? How do we strengthen it? What we know and what I know is it requires constant attention. You do today and it looks great, it's out of date the next week. So the brand is critically important. Another observation is, are we organized effectively? That we achieve the highest level of administrative efficiency possible? My guess is we have. You've probably scraped the fat off of the frame for years and years, as we have at my institution. But we must continue to find administrative and other efficiencies where they might be there. Also, while I'm listening, I'm looking for the distinctive competencies of the university. I've identified some already. There will be many others that come to light. How can we leverage those to better the university itself, and can we explore new opportunities? So finally, I would say to you that the challenges are real and the opportunities are abundant. And I feel that my skill set and my passion for excellence make me a great fit to be the next president of Missouri Southern State University. It would be my honor to work together with you to lead this great university to new heights. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. McConnell. We're going to go ahead and transition now to the question and answer period.
Okay.
So the first question, it's a finance and budget one, so should be right up your alley.
Okay.
The ability to establish priorities, especially in a challenging fiscal environment, is critical. How would you approach a realignment of investment opportunities to position the university for success while working with budget challenges?
investment opportunities relating to the endowments. Is that what we're talking about? Uh, I would certainly evaluate the current endowment policies, the programs that they're being deployed now to determine to weigh in on how well those are working. In terms of prioritization of budgets, you have a new strategic plan. It's of note that you just got 5-year reaccreditation from the accrediting body for Missouri Southern, which is very significant, and you've just redone your strategic plan. So, in terms of prioritization of limited resources, the allocations should tie back to um, the strategic priorities outlined in the strategic plan, and those priorities established by the Board of Governors to support the plan and to make any modifications that may be needed to the plan.
The next question is coming from our streaming audience. How important do you feel it is to work together as a team? And that was capitalized. So, how important do you feel it is to work together as a team with a common goal on all levels of the campus? And here's an interesting secondary part of the question. What level do you feel is the most important to reach a common goal?
Well, working together as a team is extremely critical, and the tenets of shared governance, of working together in a cooperative environment, are absolutely essential to the financial health of an institution. And really, that level, that teamwork can transcend the organization. That is not just done at the president's cabinet level. Uh, that's not done just at the faculty senate or the staff senate. It's a collaborative process in any level throughout the organization. There can be contributions and should be contributions.
What has been your experience with shared governance in your career thus far? And what is your vision for how shared governance should work on a university campus?
Well, it's a basic tenet in higher education. I absolutely believe in shared governance. That and it is a investment. The university, the leaders of the university need to be involved with that, and that is more than just showing up every other month to the faculty senate meeting and giving a brief remarks. It's meeting on a regular basis with the leaders of the senate, both the faculty senate and staff senate. Get my terms are slightly different at my university, so but the idea of shared governance is fundamental. If you don't embrace it and utilize that, then it creates a spirit of distrust, and which is very counterproductive, obviously. And in a limited resource environment, the level of transparency and the notion of governance is absolutely critical, because as if people understand the circumstances, what you're trying to do and what you're able to do and not do, you get a far better result. And I congratulate Missouri Southern on Empower You and open book management approach that you have taken and continue to take. I'm sure that given has provided great dividends for the university, and congratulations on that.
If you were hired, how would you use this position to increase or enhance diversity at Missouri Southern?
Well, I think the president, in many ways, is a chief diversity officer at the institution. That is a fundamental investment. It's an investment in at-risk students or others through increase in scholarship opportunities, to bring people to campus, to give them opportunities. You already have that investment in first generation students already. I think it's absolutely the president certainly plays that key role in that, and in hiring. When you talk about diversity as it relates to the faculty and staff, um, the direction for diversity is set top down. And if it is an expectation that we pursue through advertisement and other opportunities to bring in a diverse set of faculty and staff, and a level of international. It is in our statute that we will be global citizens and have an international focus. So that level of diversity also applies to international.
Any questions from the community that's here with us today?
So this is directly from your profile. Your current university has grown 29% over the last 7 years. What do you contribute that growth, and what was your role in that?
Well, our growth in many respects is related to the economic region that we're located in the state of Georgia. It's a really high growth area. We are very intentional. We've projected growth projections of 2 to 3% because of the demand and because of the environment and because of our academic quality. We've been and our price. We've been an attractive destination for students, and because of all of those circumstances, really an abundance of high quality high schools in neighboring communities, very high population areas, we've been able to benefit from that, and certainly by having a quality product that kind of builds upon itself. Yes, sir.
Appreciate you showing an interest in coming to a great institution here.
Yes, sir.
A couple of questions. One is, what's enrollment at North Georgia? Your enrollment?
Well, we have 5 campuses. Our total enrollment is approximately 20,000 students. The residential campus is about 7,400 students. We have another campus with about 8,000 students, one with about 1,200 students, and one with about 800 students, and one with about 400. I hope that added up pretty close. So,
next question is, in your athletic department, are you NC2A, NAIA? What kind of athletic program do you have there?
we are NCAA Division II. We have a very strong athletic program. We do not have football, but we have very comparable programs to Missouri Southern, except for football, and have been very, I think, quite successful. Softball team about 3 years ago won the national championship. It's our single national championship, but we've been competitive in postseason tournaments the last several years.
Yeah, that was my next question is, what do you think the role of athletics is in your college there, and as far as public relations and enrollment numbers and that'd be my next question.
Yes, sir. I think athletics plays a vital role, and I think it's an important role. It's part of a liberal arts residential experience. So I think our student athletes are great ambassadors to the university. The opportunity for the community to come to athletic events, it puts the university in a posture to promote what's going on campus. So I'm a 100% supporter of athletic programs, and I consider them critical to a successful residential liberal arts university.
Next question comes from our streaming audience. What, if anything, would you do as president to address concerns about pay equity as reflected in data from the College and University Professional Association?
Well, I think you have to have a commitment to pay equity. I can speak to what's happened at University of North Georgia, and so I present each year to the faculty senate, staff council, and others what the equity pay that we've done in 8 consecutive years. 8's important. That's about the time we consolidated, and so we had these 2 different campuses really worried about their pay and were we being fair and equitable, et cetera. So in those last 8 consecutive years, we probably 6 of those years made equity adjustments, and then those other years we had merit. About half. About 4 years had merit raised, and about 4 didn't. So each and every one of those years we were able to make one or the other. And I presented that to Faculty Senate. And so I think that whole faculty governance, they passed a proclamation that said we think that faculty salary should be at this benchmark. And so we were able to show them, here's the moves that we've made, based on funding, we pledged to do this. So I think it's been successful. I think you have to have a commitment to your faculty and staff. And I think I heard today that we're paying at about 83 to 85% of Coupa median, which is pretty good. But you have to continue working at that. It's also part of what you do in your efforts with the legislature to try to encourage the governor and the senators and representatives to try to help provide money to attract and retain the best faculty and staff.
The next question is going to be a little bit more focused. What do you think the role of the art, music, and theater departments have in creating a campus culture and engaging with the community?
Absolutely essential role. By their very nature, they're opening and inviting to the campus community. And I think they are part of a residential liberal arts experience. I consider them essential. Oftentimes they're not your high volume classes, et cetera, but I think they're a very important part, and they add to the richness of the university and the university experience.
And now back to our streaming audience. How do you view the role of information technology within higher education in a post-pandemic environment?
Well, I think we've got the first kind of inclination of what that will be. It's absolutely critical. It is a significant investment, and it's one that we have to make and that we have to continue to improve upon, to have the flexibility that we've been shown in this semester with coronavirus, that we have to be adaptable. What we thought we were doing, we suddenly had to change it, and we're able to pull it off. And so I think with very few exceptions, our students will complete this semester. Many will graduate. The hybrid opportunities for class, I think, will just continue to enhance. We may see changes in how our employees work. There may be a proliferation in telework. That I think the whole model will change a bit post-pandemic, and I think it was already changing in terms of academic pedagogy.
And I'm scanning our in-house audience. Sure.
Yes.
Initiatives and how sometimes the state deals with low enrollment or low completing or low graduation programs. What's your take on that?
Well, that can be tough. I really think it's imperative that the faculty, led by the provost, evaluate the priorities of the academic mission. There probably has to be some sort of metric to kind of help guide how the universities operate, and some performance measure, or we agree to say that this program is important as a university. We want to continue that, and if it has 10 students in a major, that's fine, or not. So I don't necessarily like for it to be politicized by outside parties. I like for that to be handled by the academics through the faculty senate, through academic affairs, the provost, as the primary experts in that.
Over to academics. So there's a little bit of a preparatory sentence here, and then we'll get to the question. So current full-time faculty teach 4 loads, with 60% of salaried time dedicated to teaching, 20% dedicated to scholarship research, and 20% dedicated to service. Given the institution's interest in moving towards more scholarly and graduate level work, how do you envision the realignment of faculty responsibilities and workload, especially with regard to tenure and promotion guidelines?
Okay, well, that's a loaded one. The workload issues, I think, come through the faculty, through the provost office. They're led oftentimes by the accrediting bodies, and so depending on which accrediting body and that you subscribe to, there may be enhanced research components, service components, etc. Uh, I don't think you make across the board declarations on workload. Um, I think they are driven by the academic units themselves, and um, so that's that's a decision that the recommendations that would should come up through the academic affairs.
What do you see as the future of academic libraries?
Well, I think libraries are sort of a symbol of the university. I don't see them ever going away. I think their mission is obviously evolving now. It's no longer the requirement to have the stacks of books and volumes, digital copies, etc. I would envision the libraries of the future to be more interactive, to have uh, multi-purpose workspace, group collaboration space for students. I think they're subject to the whole change requirements, just like the rest of the university. To remain relevant and contribute to the institution, uh, libraries will need to evolve.
I kind of like this question. I'm sorry, go ahead, please.
Ask about staff salaries. I know you earlier on you had mentioned faculty salaries, and you noticed that we are paying about 80 to 85% of Cooper. What do you think about staff salaries and how that should be measured or guided in the decisions, both for classified and professional staff?
So I don't know the metrics at Missouri Southern on the staff side. I can speak from University of North Georgia. Our staff are at about 85% of market median. Our faculty are at about 95%. It's a little different market. So, but I think the same principle applies to staff, either classified or regardless of their classification. Uh, to have the best quality staff, we should benchmark them against an agreed upon metric, and then try to move across that metrics over time. I think it is also it's an equal priority. Uh, we should take care of our staff just as we do the faculty. Good question.
This next one is kind of a fun question. All right. So, if you had the power to change one thing in higher education, what would it be and how would you go about implementing that change?
Uh, well, I think the one thing in public higher education, I think it would be the amount of state support. I would I fundamentally believe that the states should pay the larger portion of the cost of higher education. Uh, Now that's not happening maybe anywhere in America right now. So that's but if I had the power to change anything, I would increase the amount of state support so that we could radically decrease the amount of tuition charged. When public higher education was founded, our forefathers imagined that an educated citizenry should be provided to all citizens, and I think really provided at really no charge. So that's certainly not realistic, but I would love to see the amount of state support across the U.S. go up dramatically.
So, staying on the topic of change, give us an example of a situation that you felt change needed to take place for the betterment of a campus, but received great pushback. And how did you handle that?
Uh, I think most recently, it becomes complicated, but most recently, we have differing tuition rates between our associate and bachelor students. And so at one point, the Board of Regents said, well, we should just average that out and just do the average. Well, we decided that you can't do that. We submitted a proposal to redesign how we were handling the associate pathway to limit the number of associate programs offered and the kind of cohort size on each of the campuses. And we were just recently, that was turned down by the Board of Regents. And they said, well, you know, you can't do that. And so how you handle that, we're working now with I'm working with our provost. We'll kind of repackage that to try to understand the political influence that's saying that that doesn't make sense and go back at it again.
Missouri Southern serves a global mission. Can you speak to the support of and direction of our international mission, especially in today's post-pandemic society?
Well, I tell you, I absolutely love the international mission, and I certainly support that. I think being global citizens is absolutely imperative for our world. Um, Post-pandemic has greatly challenged that, and it will for the next few years till we understand as a world how we travel the globe and how we do that safely. But I would not want to see us lose focus on um, international citizenry and having international students on campus and broad opportunities for our students. That may take a year or so to shake out till we can once again travel safely and send our students abroad or receive students safely.
And I'll scan the audience here today again. Yes, sir.
So can I get your top 3 things a university needs to do to improve retention? So in other words, give me your vision for retention increases and what you would do, maybe your top 3 things that you would do to make that happen.
Well, I would make sure first, that's a good question, Nicholas, and I would make sure that I understood what we're doing now at the institution. I think increased advisement. I know we've done that recently at University of North Georgia, more than quadrupled the number of advisors. We have early advisement and ongoing for students in their freshman, sophomore year to try to help shape their pathways. I think data analytics plays a big role. You've probably seen nationally Georgia State University and Mark Becker, their president, has had a lot of notoriety on improving retention rates at that huge downtown Atlanta university. And a lot of that has to do with data analytics. And so it's studying trends with the students and how they're doing. And it has a whole number of variables that it measures. So, you know, I think those would be my top 2.
Back to our streaming community. UNG was a leader in a merger, and that merger added to UNG campuses characterized by lower entrance scores than those at your residential campus. What is your philosophy and practice regarding the need to balance the student access granted via open admissions with the need to retain and graduate students?
Well, that was really this whole problem I was just talking about in many ways. So when we consolidated 8 years ago, we brought together 2 completely different types of institutions. North Georgia College was a highly selective, strong liberal arts residential campus, and Gainesville State College was an access institution. And that's not a bad word at all, but with different admission standards, et cetera. And that was so when they came together, when we were told to consolidate. Now that it's all over, we have a great university, but we said, well, you know, how do you bring those 2 together? And so we came up with a pathways model. So if you meet certain standards, you're admitted to the baccalaureate program. Other standards, you can be admitted to the associate program. We only offer the associate degree on 4 of the campuses. So we're able to kind of balance that by not allowing associates on the Dahlonega campus and offering it at the other 4 campuses. So that is really a tough balancing act, but I think it's worth doing. I think it provides a unique opportunity here and you're already embracing it in Missouri Southern, and that non-traditional and other students, you're able to bring them in, and maybe they're not baccalaureate ready, or maybe they have to work and have, so we can attend to a wide array of economic situations that our students might arrive here. So I think it's a good mix. It is a challenge, and the challenge that we have now at North Georgia is we have a 74% difference in the tuition, and so that's the post consolidation result that we're having to try to deal with. In that, we have students that are baccalaureate prepared, and they say, well, look, I'll do the associate pathway for 2 years. It's cheaper. Well, so that is creating some friction for us. And so what we want to do is get the rates closer together, still provide access and those types of opportunities through scholarships and other things, so it's not a financial hardship.
The next is a town and gown question. What is your vision for continued relational development between the university, the city of Joplin, and the surrounding communities?
Well, I think it's a imperative opportunity that you're very intentional about the town and gown relationships. And in my case, I served on the Downtown Development Authority for years and years. We have campus representatives on the County Development Authority, and any number of service authorities. I served on a group of including a couple of senators, to try to get a new public library in one of the towns. So a town and gown is something you have to stay after. It's not a given that you always have good relationships, and so you have to be intentional. You have to let the community know what you're doing as a university, and figure ways that you can partner and create win-win situations. Uh, it is a great opportunity. As we know, the university is one of the great economic engines in the area, and we need to make sure that we uh, advertise that and let people know that.
I'm going to try to kludge two questions together, and they both come from our streaming audience, and they're about reduced budgets. So the first discusses there is a propensity sometimes to take a look at the humanities when reducing programs, reducing budgets. And then the second question was protecting non tenure track. So the overarching question, reduced budgets, and now maybe more specifically with non tenure track folks and with certain programs.
Right.
General thoughts.
Well, of course, the when you start trying to reduce the faculty, if they're tenured faculty, then there are certain protections based on the tenure policy. So that makes that group very difficult to, short of a program elimination, to kind of to lay them off or whatever. So just as a matter of economics, if you're having to reduce the core of instruction, non-tenured faculty would be the first choice that you would land. Uh, I would at University of North Georgia in my career, we have never laid off an employee, and that's now we have frozen frozen new hires for a year or more. Attrition, not rehiring the position. Um, there's several other measures that we've had to use, but we've never resorted yet to having to lay off. We have had to make the decision to maybe eliminate a program, but that is done very carefully, hopefully informed by the faculty and certainly the academic side if it's an academic program.
Let's scan the audience again. All right. Let's go to this one. In your opinion, how important is communication from the president and university administration to faculty, staff, students, constituents, and the community? What strategies would you use to ensure that flow of communication?
Well, I think the communication is critical. I mean, it is fundamental in how we operate as a university. Uh, Multiple strategies. I will relate what we're doing at University of North Georgia as it goes, as we've been going through the pandemic. Now, keep in mind, in Georgia, the coronavirus itself is a little more pronounced than it is here. So there's maybe a little higher level of tension and concern. The president there's been weekly written communications to the faculty, staff, and students. Since the pandemic started, there's been 2 town halls, virtual town halls, where the president and certain cabinet members are available and to give updates on status and how the university's doing and how we're preparing for fall or how we prepared through summer. So those are, and I think I think the last town hall, there were over 600 people that logged in to hear that. So I think, in times of crisis like that, that you see the importance, and then ongoing, how you communicate effectively, you do it in writing. Town halls are an effective measure. Showing up at events, showing up at departments, just kind of being around and interacting with people is critical. So I think those are kind of some of the key tenets.
From our streaming audience, what do you see as the future of open educational resources and how they fit into higher education curriculum?
Well, I think we've seen that really take off. To where it will land, we don't know. But the whole notion of cost of attendance and free text, online, open source text has been very popular, and I think it has served a need for higher education. For you have certain students that want a hard copy book. That's the way they learn. That's what they want. And you have other groups that can't afford that. So having the open source, open text, those types of things provide uh, a valid venue to deliver the instructional material to students. So I think I would see that increasing over time. It has certainly caused university bookstores to completely rethink their business model. And I know there's a very successful textbook rental program here. It's kind of an early stage piece of an open source, so it's a greatly reduced cost to the student. Um, so I see that increasing over time.
We talked a little bit about non-tenure positions, so let's dive into the tenure. As more universities start to make the decision to do away with tenure, what are your thoughts on the issue? Also, what are your thoughts on promotion for the non-tenure track? I guess we kind of covered that.
Well, I think tenure should be protected. I think it's part of the academy, and to try to disrupt that creates anarchy that's probably not worth doing. I think it's kind of fundamental in how we do public higher education. So I would not advocate doing away with tenure. That said, I think we still have to. There is an expectation of performance for tenured faculty, for faculty and staff, for all of us, that we shouldn't be lax on. But I think trying uh, to tackle the tenure thing, I don't think is a good idea. Um, you know, there are, I think, and I'm not sure here, but at our university, there are embedded tenure promotion tracks, from instructor, assistant professor, full professor, et cetera, with certain pay increases associated with that. Uh, at our university, we probably haven't given as much attention to the non-tenure faculty. It's probably an area that definitely deserves attention. They typically come in at a rate, and if their merit raises or if there's some adjustment to pay, their pay may go up. There's not promotion paths, and that's probably something that we should address.
Now, you touched on this next one a little bit in your presentation, but we're going to deep dive a little bit more. What is your knowledge of and intention to continue Missouri Southern's open book management initiative known as Empowering You?
Oh, I think you would definitely want to. Having open records, transparency in how you operate is absolutely imperative. I think the national recognition that Empower You, the open book management that the university has gained by that, I would embrace that. I would consider that one of the university's distinctive competencies, and try to continue to leverage that as you're leveraging now with Nick and your group in terms of uh, adding faculty metrics and other things to. It's a really good idea, and so I would I would support continuing it and enhancing it.
What's your vision as to the depth and breadth of undergraduate and graduate degree offerings at the university?
I think it is a really interesting mix right now. I would need to study more, need that listening piece to make sure how responsive our programmatic offerings are um, to the needs of the region and to the students. I think it is a nice mix. I think with the research focus, I would like to see more graduate degrees if that makes sense and you're able to afford those, either in education or business. Uh, there are multiple areas to provide additional graduate degrees. Um, they the students tend to perform well. I think they do a lot to improve the overall um, uh, credentials, the performance credentials of our of the students. So
How would you respond to a university staff member who told you they felt that the staff in general were underappreciated across campus while the faculty was overpaid?
Um, well, I would tell the staff they're definitely appreciated, and try to find out other examples of where that's going on at, and what areas are we not appreciating the staff. Um, I think the publishing of benchmark data and how we pay the faculty and staff against metrics that have been published kind of help uh, remedy that to some extent. Say, well, you're showing favoritism to the faculty. Well, we all are paid at certain percentage of Coupa data or whatever metrics that we're using. Um, I think that says, well, no, that's really not the case. We're not showing favoritism, although sometimes it feels like that. But I think being open and transparent and say, well, here's what we've done, um, and we won't tolerate, um, second-class citizens. That's just not something we do.
Describe how supportive you'll be of the existing cooperative agreements with area institutions, for example, Ozark Christian College, Kansas City University, and then the future KCU Dental School.
I would be very supportive in trying to find ways to find additional ones. Um, I think they're great pipelines, and I would be very much supportive of those.
And I'll scan the team here today again. Okay. How do you view bystander intervention programs and the importance of training on those intervention programs?
I think they certainly have a place uh, uh, if that's. I'm not 100% sure I understand that term, but if it's like see something, say something. If it's some of those kinds of programs, if you see something going on in the university that causes concern, you should be able to report that and report that safely. I'd certainly, I do support those and will continue to support them.
And I'll even give you a little more context in the question for power-based personal violence.
Uh, Kind of the same answer. Yeah, if you see something, it should be reported. And I'm sure there are pretty extensive reporting mechanisms within the university to report that and to have that appropriately investigated.
I think one of the key roles for a university president is having a certain degree of political acumen. Can you talk about the relationships that you would try to build not only in the community, but also extending to Jeff City?
Well, again, I think you have to be very intentional about that. It starts out with uh, boards of governors, other influential people of the university that have been in politics, that have been in the legislature or otherwise. They understand kind of how the Missouri political machine works. So first, you got to understand that, and then you get people to help you introduce you to other people. uh, I think you have to be engaged. You have to stay engaged. You have to be at the Capitol. You have to invite legislators to campus. You have to, um, and the role of the president is the chief advocate for the university. So you have to tell the university story, the reason the funding, the reason that whatever you're asking for is so critical. Um, you have to have a vision, see the vision, and sell the vision over and over again. And it comes with engagement and direct involvement.
Talk a little bit about your experience with that, please.
Well, I personally, I go to the Capitol. Our session, I think, is similar to here. We're January to April, not counting the pandemic year. So I'm at the Capitol 3 to 5 times, just in my role as chief business officer, talking with our delegation and others. We have UNG Day at the Capitol. I suspect there are certain things here where you go and you set up tables and talk about the university. Um, you find opportunity with influential alumni and others. Um, for example, I was able to negotiate a $10 million gift for a new business building a couple of years ago. Um, and so part of the deal and talking with our donors, if we could make that gift, we can, get state support for the other piece. So 10 million and add $30 million and build this new facility. And so he agreed to the gift. And once we had the gift, he was also a contributor to the governor and to several influential senators. Uh, I and our president accompanied him to Atlanta to meet to help sell that message. So I think that's a really good example. You take people of influence with you. You have to influence your message and your need, and certainly with donors that support the governor or others are a big help. And so that we were able to get that capital funding. We got design money in last year's session from the state piece, and hope to have the construction money in this session, which should already be over, but it's not going to start back up to the third week in June. So, but we expect it to be in the budget. So.
Missouri Southern is home to 3 student media organizations: The Chart, which is the newspaper, KGCS, which is television, and KXMS radio. What role do you believe student media organizations should play on a university campus, and what is your level of commitment to a free and independent collegiate press, especially when these organizations may report on news about the university which might be unflattering?
Well, I certainly support a free and independent press, and so I think the university press um, is a good mechanism. The media, the TV, and all, I think are they're great training pathways for students who have aspirations for careers in those venues. Uh, I think it's part of the whole transparency message. So you kind of have to take the good with the bad. Um, you do the right work and do it the right way, and the students will say what the students are going to say, but uh, as long as you have the consistent message, I support it, and certainly support the roles of the media. I think it's been it's very interesting to having the local TV and so forth.
Would you speak a little bit more about your feelings toward and perhaps experience in fundraising and friend raising?
Well, certainly, been successful in the last couple of years in the friend raising part. I have always been heavily involved with our alumni affairs and at their social venues with Tona and others. And so you develop relationships with them. I kind of expanded. You don't necessarily see the chief financial officer out doing fundraising, but over the last 6 or 8 or 10 years, that role is my role has expanded in that because I am heavily involved with the legislature, and sometimes there's some synergy. So in terms of personal experience, I was able to secure the $10 million gift based on a call from the donor who had originally had a $5 million gift um, as a matching pledge. And so whatever our advancement team, we weren't able to get the matching money. Said, I really want to build this new business building. What will it take? Said, well, if we had a $10 million outright gift, I believe we can get the legislature to fund their part. We can break ground in 24 months. And he said, let's do it. So, and then a few months ago, I was able to close another donor who had passion for athletics, wanted to put video boards up, got a $1 million gift to put up 3 video boards on our soccer, baseball, and soccer complex. And then Monday of this week, in all honesty, said, well, so we named the park for that donor who gave the $1 million for the signs. And I said, well, we'd like a really nice sign out at the front entrance, the 2 entrances to the complex. And so we had estimates, and it was $125,000. So I sent the proposal Monday, and I said, here's the cost. And so she said, where do I send the check to? So I raised $125,000 this week. So that doesn't happen every week, but so I've had a good bit. It starts with friend raising, and then having the compelling vision to create excitement and to help donors to see that their gift can help be a part, tug on their heartstrings, help be a part of the university, be a part of students' success moving forward. And you stay after it, you can be very successful at it.
What are your thoughts about how you can encourage students to transfer in?
Well, I think having certainly the articulation agreements, those opportunities are out there. The reputation for academic quality, for helping students get across the finish line, that they may need help in a certain area. All of those things can support a transfer mission. I've had a lot of work. Our current president at North Georgia, I've been with her now for 8 years. She founded the National Institute for the Study of Transfer Students. And so that's been a focus at University of North Georgia, and to identify the sorts of needs that transfer students may have, and whether that's need for advisement or scholarship or whatever their needs are. It's a different marketing mix, but it's a very viable market.
We're going to go back to budget and finance, and this question is about budget cuts, but asked a little bit differently. What would be the major areas to avoid when talking about budget cuts?
Well, certainly at the University of North Georgia, it's the academic mission. You have to give primary emphasis to academics and student success, as I said earlier. So if you lay off the faculty and can't have the classes, then the whole house of cards begins to tumble. So to me, you need to avoid that at all costs. Uh, it's a really tough situation with continued cuts, because on the staff side, if you cut and cut and cut there, suddenly you don't have enough staff support people to effectively maintain the campus. You begin to add risk factors in terms of internal control. If you don't have enough people doing the various functions, it's really problematic. But again, it starts with academics. That has to be the top priority. You have to have that, and you really try to not get into laying off of people.
I'm going to change this question just a little bit because I don't think that you spent a lot of time in this 4 states area. So I'm going to ask it this way. Based on what you've read and researched and seen so far, what interests you most about the 4 states area?
Uh, I think certainly the geography, I find it really interesting and fascinating. The 4 states within 5 miles of each other. I just think it creates abundant opportunities. Um, Zeb and I are really enthralled with the wildlife opportunities for hunting and fishing and duck hunting and so forth. So that attracts me. I think the growth of the Joplin area. I think university is on the cusp of great things, and whether the financial piece through the pandemic and just a lot of opportunity to really set Missouri Southern on a trajectory of continued excellence and growth.
We'll make this the second to last question. What do you believe is the role of a university in continuing education and professional development for non-degree seeking students?
Well, you would typically see that. We've had professional and continuing education at our university the entire time I've been there. Um, I think it provides a valid service. I think it needs to be self-sustaining. It should generate enough revenue to sustain its cost of operation. Um, so it definitely provides a service. Anytime I think you're bringing citizens to the campus, you're promoting the university and creating opportunities. So certainly like to see it continue.
This last question is really an opportunity for you to give a little bit of a summation and tell us a little bit more about yourself. But here it is. Tell us about your leadership style and what makes you different from others. And then as you do that, could you kind of roll back in a little bit about what you think your current colleagues would say about you?
Okay. Well, I think my leadership style is one of collaboration. I like to bring people together. I think uh, my colleagues would say I'm collegial, um, try to get together to reach a common good, try to have a high level of transparency. Um, I'd lead, as I said earlier, lead by serving others. I think role of the servant leader is important. That you have to put yourself out there to show that you're willing to make the sacrifice for the greater good of the university and the region. So I think those are kind of the key things. Uh, as I mentioned, I've worked with a wide variety of constituents and cabinet membership and 4 different presidents, and I think they would all support that. You know, I am collaborative, and that I really have the institution's best interest at heart, as opposed to just myself or some. It is about the institution and the people that make up the university.
Thanks so much. On behalf of the Missouri Southern family, thank you very much for your time with us today so that we could learn a little bit more about you and you could learn a little bit more about us. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Mac McConnell.
Thank you very much. Thank you.